Welcome back. Not too long ago, I encouraged, or at least invited, some of my subscribers, any of you, to challenge me to a daily game, rated or unrated, on chess.com or Lichess, and several of you took me up on the offer. Now, some of you were rated quite a bit ahead of me, and I did my best, but then once I saw no way out, I resigned. At least one of you played me 2 or 3 times, and I lost easily. I don't know what I could have done better in those games, and that's why I didn't accept further challenges. But some of you were lower rated than me, and I think maybe I can help. So this is one of the lower rated opponents who challenged me to a daily game. This was Luffy Ichigo. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce the username on chess.com. But now, surprisingly, I checked your profile. You're much higher rated than me in Blitz and Rapid. So maybe something just went wrong here. You're not used to the daily format. I don't know. But I'm going to try to see what happened in this game. Let's take a look. Okay, so I opened with d4, and we had a modern defense, which in a few moves transposed into a King's Indian. Here, it was this move. Once, according to the opening book on chess.com, now it's a King's Indian defense. To me, I think this is what you would also play in the modern. I really don't know. But anyway, it's now called a King's Indian defense. So I went about my business with the knight to c3, trying to exercise some control over the center. I do understand that these defenses, which came about in the early to mid 1900s, also exercise control over the center, but from the corner. So I honestly don't know what's better here. I do know that all of this seems normal to me at this point. I'm getting a bigger center, but again, black is exercising control over center squares as well. And once the knight's out of the way, of course, the bishop hits down through here. Now, here, I made a mistake, or at least inaccuracy. I think here I probably should have just gotten this bishop out to e2 and castled. Possibly trying to put that bishop on g5. But what I did instead, and I have mentioned on this channel before that I am very often not sure, or at least unclear about how to do these pawn breaks. I know that before I played that, I was thinking that one of the reasons that black might play d6 is to prepare a c5, which could eat away at my center, or an e5, which could eat away at my center, or both. I suppose in either of those scenarios, whether they played c5 or e5, I guess I could just push the d-pawn, but I don't know. That's one of my weaknesses, and it's a known weakness. I'm very often not sure how to handle the pawn pushes, when it's best to lock the center after something like this is played, or when it's best to take, or when it's best to proactively stop that from happening. And that's what I was thinking here, is that instead of letting my opponent play here, I thought I would just go ahead. And that's what I did. And my opponent is supposed to take center pawn for center pawn, which is what they did. And my best move here is to take back, but I just have a very slight advantage at this point, according to Stockfish. Yeah, the evaluation bar is visible on your screen. And here, I think black has a number of possible moves, but they need to move this knight. They don't want to move this knight at this point, obviously, I think, because you would just lose a knight for a pawn. That makes sense. And then our queens would see each other at that point, but my queen is defended by a knight, and their queen is only defended by the king. So yeah, so you don't want to move this knight here, but you need to get your F knight off of that square. And I think, going back is one option, and going forward is one option. But what they did was went here. And that looks safe enough, but you see the evaluation bar jump. That's because Stockfish wants me to play g5 here. I didn't see that. I'm only seeing that in the evaluation. It's now +2, almost +3, but it's only if I see g5. And I'm not saying I wouldn't see that. It's just I'm still at the stage novice, or just ahead of beginner, where it's still pretty important to not push the pawns in front of your king. Now, I know they're not in front of my king right now, but I am very quickly planning to move my light squared bishop and then castle. And I wouldn't feel safe castling here. I guess Stockfish thinks that's important because you're going to win the knight for a pawn. And that apparently to the engine, that's worth doing this here. I didn't do that. I played e6. Which loses all that advantage. But all that advantage that you saw in the previous move was because I was supposed to play g5. The reason that I played that is because I saw that black had two pieces on this, and why not cause some more troubles down here and do something with that f-pawn? So I pushed it forward instead of attacking this knight. Well, now that knight can go back if it wants to, but black's best move here is to take this pawn, and they did. And now this is weak, but it's only weak, I guess, if I get to it before they castle, because once they castle, that's going to put the rook here, and the rook is going to have a nice open file. So, I mean, I really don't know how bad that was for them, other than stacking a couple of pawns in the middle. And now my best move is to put my knight in here. Is that what I did? It is what I did. Okay, now I'll tell you what I saw here. Not only is that a relatively safe space for the knight, unless, I mean, this pawn is not there right now, but that pawn is there, and nothing's defending it. That's what I saw. And I thought, that queen can't move, and black has nothing guarding e6. So this was kind of, I guess, if you want to call it hope chess, hoping that they wouldn't make a move to either defend that square, which actually I don't know how they can defend it at this point. But I would from there be able to win the queen for a knight. That was my plan. Well, it didn't work out. My opponent got their bishop out almost immediately, checking me. Well, I can't do my plan while I'm in check, so I have to get out of it. So I took their bishop with my pawn, now planning to do this. But my opponent moved their knight. That way, I can't take this because it's defended by their knight from the side. And of course, now their queen is not trapped anymore. Problem with this, and I don't know, did you notice the evaluation jumping? I see the thought process behind it, but probably what black should have done here, at least I think what I would have done here is maybe just move the c-pawn. That would have given this queen an escape route somewhere down that diagonal, like in a Caro-Kann or something where that c-pawn isn't there. Because you can't move this pawn, and you can't move the bishop, so there's only two ways to get the queen out right now. One would be to castle. I mean, not only would that put the rook on the open file, that would also give the queen an escape route here. But the only two things really, I guess, to do is to move the knight or the pawn. And as Stockfish's top move here is to play c6, which I think is what I would have done. But I'm also very familiar with the Caro-Kann. I say very familiar, compared to what I was a few months ago, not compared to people who actually know the opening. But anyway, yeah, that would have allowed the queen an escape route there rather than being trapped in here. But they chose the knight move, which again seems smart at first because A, it guards the pawn, and B, it gets the queen an escape route. The problem is that my queen has the turn right now, and they don't have anything defending that square where the queen is except the king. Once they take it, they will have lost castling rights. And that's what I saw. So I took, and they lost their castling rights. Obviously, I didn't know I was up on nearly +4 at this point. I think, trying to think what I would do if I, wait, no, it's white's turn here. I was trying to think what I would do if I was playing with the black pieces at this point, but black has already made their move. To me, once they've taken that, this is fairly obvious, and that's what I did. So I win the rook, and of course the knight is not going to get out of there, because if it gets out here, the king gets it, and if it gets out here, the pawn gets it. So, but that's okay. They've lost castling rights, and they've lost a rook for a knight, so I'm good with that. Now, I think their best move is probably to start consolidating defenses here, either by bringing this knight in, or maybe, yeah, maybe this pushing b6, not only would that guard the knight, but it would allow the bishop to get out this way, one of those squares. But what my opponent played was that, which kind of confused me, because we'd already established that the knight wasn't getting out. The knight couldn't go here, and it could go here. I mean, it could go to either of those squares, but going there, the king would have already got it because the king was already close enough. And here, that's probably my best bet, is just to take a pawn out as I go. But I also wanted to castle. So it turns out to not be one of my better moves. My better move now, best move according to Stockfish, is checking here on h6. I'm not sure why. Because it looks like the king's marching over here to get the knight anyway. I guess, okay, it would have developed to my bishop to a safe square that the king couldn't get to. And then allowed my rook to get out, I guess. Okay. But what I did was I decided I've still got this, and I still have castling rights. So why don't I take advantage of that? I got this bishop out preparing to castle. Okay, my opponent did play their best move, which is what I had suggested in an earlier turn, was to at least provide some defense for the king, either that or this. And of course, since I moved my bishop out, it still wants me to... Well, now it wants me to go bishop to a3, or e3, or even f4. I mean, those are just one-move attacks, though, right? This just attacks this knight, which can be defended with either a pawn or just by moving back, or over here. So I don't know if that would have been so important. This would hit this undefended pawn, I guess. I don't know. But I wanted to castle, so I did. And my opponent continued going after the knight, which at this point, now that they've made this move, the engine says, go ahead and keep going there. But I decided I'm about to lose this anyway, so I might as well take a pawn out with me. So I did that, and they took my knight. Okay. So that knight got a rook and a pawn. So not bad. And again, Stockfish wants me to get my other bishop out, which that's a good idea. Connect the rooks. I decided to get it out this way, but I wanted it not in front of the pawn. I wanted it behind the pawn. So I played that. Still have a pretty noticeable advantage. And my opponent played one of their better moves, which is here. I understand that way the two knights protect each other. Although at this point I could just start trading off, either whatever, because I'm up on material a little bit. I'm up in exchange. Why didn't I play this? Because that was my original plan for playing a4. Oh, I thought if I did this, that cuts off the rook's defense of this pawn. I also saw that that knight moved here was hitting this pawn, which is now undefended. So that's why I played this. I understand that. Okay. And they went in there, which I couldn't figure out. Where are they going from there? I obviously they're going after my rook, but I've just moved my bishop, which freed my rook. And Stockfish wants me to just move it up one. But I moved the bishop. I wanted the rook to get out this way. And also I've got a whole open file. So that made sense to me. I played that. That's not too bad. And then they went up there, I guess, going after this pawn. But that pawn's defended. I'm not sure what their idea was. Knights on the rim are dim. I do know that. So I don't think I would have done that if I were them. What would I have done here if I were my opponent? I really don't know. Stockfish says to block off the open file. Okay, I get that. We're all learning something here. Stockfish says put this knight back here because it's going to be doubly protected on that spot, and I'm not going to exchange a rook for it. So it would kind of put a plug in this entire open file. I was honestly thinking of going ahead and moving my rook all the way to the end right now before that bishop moves. Because then the bishop would kind of be stuck there. You'd have to wait to do this and move there, but then I would trade for that rook. So that was one of my ideas here, and so that would prevent my plan if they had played their knight to d6 like Stockfish said. But they went out there, But now they're hitting... Oh, I know what I was thinking here. Okay. Well, because what I played was c5, and I was sitting here trying to think, why did I do that? The reason that I did that, it wasn't because their knight was aiming at it. It's defended. The problem is, I want to move this pawn because of this. But I can't move the back c pawn if I've got a front c pawn in the way. So I moved that. My opponent took it, which is their best move. But now I can move this pawn, which is what I wanted to do. Oh, is it my best move? Oh, no, it's my second best move. But that was my plan because that's check. Okay, so check. And I had kind of held this in reserve. I was still thinking about rook to d8. But at this point, I might as well do that. And they played king to h7. Stockfish is saying king to f7 would have, f7 would have been better. I'm not sure exactly why. Or even, it says even block it with e5? Wait. I think if they blocked with e5, I would have just taken, wouldn't I? I don't know. But they went there, and then I saw, wait, this could get good. Because that would be checkmate if I could do that. So I played down there. And now my opponent has to stop checkmate. And one way they can is by playing this. But if they played that, I think I would just take it. Is there another way they can stop checkmate? Yes. They need to move their king so they can get out of there. But they didn't. They played here, going after my rook. I'm not sure why. And that was checkmate. So I'm not saying that I would have beaten the same opponent. Again, Luffy Chigo in Blitz or Rapid, because again, they're rated much higher than me in those faster time controls. Daily is one of the earliest formats, earliest time controls that I started playing when I started playing on chess.com, and so I'm very comfortable with looking at a position for several minutes and thinking about, what I should play, and then moving on to the next daily game and making one move in each game. It's kind of like playing a simul, or a simultaneous, where one player plays a bunch of other players. It's an interesting format. If you're not used to it, it's worth a try. So I checkmated in 23 moves, and I think it came back, if we have to go back to a point where it all changed, it was right here. It was when I had the queen trapped, and I was about to take this pawn. Definitely c6 or knight to e5 were the only two good options for my opponent. At this point, both of those would have given the queen an escape route, and c6 would have been slightly better because it would have just given up a pawn, and then the queen could have escaped to someplace over here. But because they played this, I was able to do that, and then the fork. So that's where it all changed, and I think after that it was just me being careful and not losing pieces. And as we went through here, the next place that I think I really got the advantage was when I saw that check, and then my opponent moved to the wrong way, and I saw I had two moves to mate if they didn't correct it, and they didn't. So, but thank you for the game, and again, to all you subscribers, I welcome daily challenges. The problem with challenging me to a Rapid or a Blitz is that I'm not on the websites that often. Usually only on when analyzing my games or making one of these videos, or both at the same time. But if you challenge me to a daily game, when I see it, I'll accept it, and we'll see what happens. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.